Life at the top of the food chain has for a long time meant that humans viewed themselves as morally superior to the rest of the animal kingdom. But what if animals have more complex and individualized thoughts and feelings than we've previously thought possible? Joining us now for what that might mean to how we think about and treat animals, via Skype from Stony Brook, New York, there's Carl Safina. He's the author of Beyond Words: What Animals Think and Feel. Carl, it's good to have you on TVO tonight. I want to start by just reading an excerpt of the book, and then we'll follow up with a question. Understanding other animals is not a boutique endeavor, you write. Failure will speed their end and the bankrupting of our world. And if we treated animals as they deserve, human inhumanity to humans would stand out all the more appallingly. We might then turn our attention to the next step beyond human civilization: humane civilization. Justice for all. You're sort of paraphrasing the title of that Al Pacino movie at the end there, but let's follow up on that. What would a humane society with justice for all, in your view, look like?
I think we would just try to be kinder at every opportunity. And we would, we would honor the life around us instead of see it only as resources to be used regardless of the consequences.
So is that to say that we would never eat animals anymore, or we would never kill them for their fur, that kind of thing?
Well, I'm not even sure that it would necessarily mean that. I think it is even possible to raise and keep and kill animals humanely. I don't want to do it. But I don't think that that's impossible. I think, though, that the way that we do it now, many, many millions of animals are forced to live miserable lives before we finally kill them. And they're made to live far worse than they're made to die.
Well, you've written in more than 450 pages the fact that, based on your observations and others you've talked to, that animals are a lot more intelligent, a lot more intuitive. They actually are a lot more individualistic than perhaps we humans give them credit for. Should we start to consider them as individuals in the same way that we consider human beings as individuals, in your view?
Well, it is true that every species for which people have tried to study whether they show individuality or personality, which would be defined as responding differently to the same situation. Every animal that has been studied shows that personality and individuality is very, very widespread. So essentially all mammals and birds have it. It's even been found in spiders, which is a little bit hard to believe, but it has been found. Octopuses are notoriously intelligent, very surprising considering their evolutionary history. So animals simply are much more individuals than we think. If you look at the really well-developed big-brained ones, elephants, apes, wolves, cats, whales and dolphins, you see that individuals have different lives. Their lives follow the trajectory of individual lives, and what happens to them often changes depending on whether their companions survive or their family members are killed, and things like that. Very similar to what happens in our own lives. So yeah, that's true, and in a way it's something we've never thought of, but earlier people, hunter-gatherer type people who've known animals better, have thought of it, and that's the way that they've often responded to animals. And in fact, many hunter-gatherers have had what has been described as a truce with some of the most dangerous, what we think of as dangerous, animals in the world. Wolves never hurt anybody in North America. They still don't, by the way. I think 2 people have been killed by wolves in North America. Native Americans have no fear of them whatsoever. And Elizabeth Marshall Thomas has written about her time in the Kalahari Desert in the 1950s when the people we call Bushmen were still living their completely traditional hunter-gatherer lives, and there were lions around, and the lions never hurt the Bushmen, and the Bushmen never hurt the lions. And they seemed to have this understanding that there was a truce and that they were both a bit dangerous, potentially, and they better not bother one another. You can't have an understanding with something that can't understand. So that just goes to show you.
In which case, do you think that animals are entitled to have the same rights as humans?
You know, I'm not really comfortable with that discussion. It has a lot of baggage. And the reason is that we give humans human rights that are appropriate to humans. And we couldn't give other animals exactly those kinds of rights. For instance, we give humans the right to vote. We couldn't give other animals the right to vote. It's not an appropriate thing for other animals. But what I think that we do need to do is to treat them in a way that results in no suffering, that recognizes that they can suffer or live relatively happy and well-adjusted lives, and make sure that we let them live happy and well-adjusted lives, and that we understand that each species has a right to be free, live in viable numbers with enough land or water or habitat to simply continue to exist on Earth as they have for millions of years before we ever arrived. And that this brief moment of time, when time sort of passes through us for a few years, does not give us the right to stop something that has been here for millions of years, that, first of all, simply deserves to continue because it's not up to us. And secondly, that other people who will live 100 or 1,000 years from now, or 100,000 years from now, don't deserve to inherit a disabled, depleted planet just because we thought it would be okay to destroy everything around us.
Do I infer from that answer that you believe it is inappropriate for us humans to put ourselves and our needs at the center of our experience and universe?
Well, not at the expense of everything else, which is how we are doing it. And we even often do that at the expense of other people. I think one of the sad things about people, and there are many great things about people, but one of the sad things about people is that the strong obliterate the weak. It's not just that animals can't talk and make their own case for themselves. Tribal people can make their case for themselves. Poor people can make their case for themselves. That hasn't helped them in many circumstances because we're not that nice. And if we tried to create a humane civilization where kindness, which is the best thing we're capable of, was the thing that we most emphasized, we would have a much better experience at being humans, and we would have and leave a better and more intact world.
I take your point, but it's also fair to say, I presume, that we treat animals a whole lot better today, and we have a lot more understanding about their rightful place on this planet than, say, our ancestors did 100 or 200 years ago. That's fair to say, isn't it?
I think 100 or 200 years ago, yes, that's fair to say. I think 5,000 or 10,000 years ago, no, I would say not. 200 years ago, for natives on this continent, no, I don't really think so. I think they had more respect for the creatures around them. They were more dependent on many of them, and they were more fearful that if they abused their relationship, they'd go away. They didn't understand that relationship in the same scientific ways we understand it, but their conclusion was closer to the truth. If we abuse the relationship, they go away. To those people, that mattered. To us, we don't care that much.
In which case, let's finish up on this. Given how brutally we occasionally treat our fellow human beings on this planet, do you have any reason to be optimistic that we're going to be any nicer and kinder to animals in the years to come?
Yeah, because we don't have to fix everything that we do to each other before we can start fixing other things. And as we see, we are better to other animals than we were 100 years ago. We have environmental laws and we have humane laws. Many of us, just like animals and have pets that we care for well in ways that are better, I think, than they used to be. We haven't fixed everything about how we deal with each other as far as people, but it's not sequential. We can move one and then the other. It might actually be easier for us to be kinder and gentler to other animals and then get used to that and be better to one another. I think it might work that way. People who grow up in a household of abuse become abusive. And maybe it's easier to work on that in our relationship with other animals than it is to work on that in our relationship with one another.
You give us a lot to think about in 450 plus pages of this book, Carl. Beyond Words, What Animals Think and Feel. Carl Safina, we thank you so much for being there via Skype from Stony Brook, New York. Take care.
Thanks very much. I really appreciate it, and I've tremendously enjoyed all of this.
Help TVO create a better world through the power of learning. Visit supporttvo.org and make a tax-deductible donation today.